Can I just fire all my employees?
Welcome back, TPR Nation, to another amazing episode of The Perfect RIA. I am your co-host and co-founder, Micah, and with me, as usual, the legendary Matthew Jarvis. Matthew, how's it going?
It's good, Micah. For those of you watching, thank you.
The applause sound.
It's the ocean behind us. We are recording, well, not live. It's live when we're recording it, in Homer, Alaska, on the Homer Spit, which is a kind of a fun place. We're out here as part of our owner's trip. And today, Michael, we want to talk more about staffing and employees and team members. That's, of course, our theme for the month of August. And, of course, for our Backstage Pass and Invictus members, of course, Colleen and Victoria are doing a special webinar this month to highlight how a high-performance team works from their side of the table.
That's right.
Which will be a lot of fun.
Yeah, and that's really important, right? Because we got to see both dynamics of this. And we talk about the importance of masterminds for financial planning firms, right? The importance of us getting with our peer groups and working through things. Well, guess what? It's the same with team members. And having team members' ability to hear from other team members of what's going on, it's fantastic. You know, in the owner's trip, one of the things that is really great here is the wives get to talk to each other. Yes. And one of the wives says to the other one, "Oh, your husband does that too? This is normal?" Right? So, I mean, it helps in company loves misery, I guess, or misery loves company, right? Company, yeah. But you need these other training opportunities for teams to learn from other people. So that webinar, I think, is going to be fantastic. They've done it last year, got really good response on it. So, again, I'm really excited about it.
Yeah, big shout out to Coach Andrea with Ironstone Consulting. We've always been a big fan of Masterminds. Mike and I have been for advisors, but she really stressed to us the importance that every person on your team, every key person on your team, they also need a peer group, a mastermind. Right. And so that's something we're developing more for our respective teams and also for everyone who's a Backstage Pass and Invictus member.
You know, Jarvis, I kind of think some of the ways that this goes down the path is you get excited about a position, you hire somebody, you get in a honeymoon period, right, where, oh my gosh, this is great, they're going to solve all my problems, etc. And during that honeymoon period, you think they're so great, you don't train them, you don't educate them, you don't lead them. Then shortly after that honeymoon period ends, you think they're incompetent, you want to fire them, and now you're in this dilemma that says, well, it took me 6 months to get this position, now I can't fire this person, I can't get rid of this person, etc. And that's a lot of head trash that kind of builds up over time and animosity potentially between that employee when really we failed as a leader in one of two ways. We failed to select the right person for the position, or, which we're going to talk about that and how to judge candidates for a position. And the second thing that we potentially failed in is we failed to lead in that position to set up with training, with expectations, with KPIs, with measurable results that the employees can live up to and not subjective theories or changes, from my opinion, right, as the wind blows. When I come up with new ideas and new whims, right, and they don't have it done by the time I think about it, you know, that's not a fair way to judge them in performance of their job. So how do we set this up for success, Jarvis? Let's talk about it from the onboarding person. You've already selected a candidate. You're bringing a candidate on, right? What do you got to do to make sure that's a rock star hire?
Yeah, and I want to take just one half step back and to your 2 points that it could be a bad team member that you selected or it's bad leadership. We always need to err first that it's bad leadership, right? Our Jocko kind of extreme ownership, good. All right, if there's something going on. And Micah, this goes back to having a peer group, Micah. Sometimes you and I will sort of vent back and forth like, oh, I can't believe that the team did this. And to which the response is always, oh, that's good, all caps good. What are you going to do to fix your mistake here? It's just an important thing to remember. Back to the onboarding. This is where we set clear expectations. We talked about this. Go back and listen to the episode where we talked about working with family, and we stressed having these criteria. This is where you need to stress things that are deal breakers. It's not just a threat, so to speak. It's also kind of a, hey, just so you know, these are the kind of things that will end your employment here. If you are dishonest, that will end your employment. If you are late, that will end your employment. If you cover up a mistake, that will end your employment. Here are things that will not end your employment. If you own a mistake, if you arrive on time, if you have integrity, we all make mistakes. Here's how we fix mistakes. And if you come to, the sooner you come to me, the easier it is.
And Jarvis, the reason I like outlining that, and I like what I'd like to add to that, is why, right?
Yes.
It's not enough to spell out the rules. Well, if you're late, therefore you're fired, right? No. What's the why behind that? It is disrespectful. It shows a mismanagement of your time. It shows a disrespect from me to your other team members and to clients to be late. Yes. And that's not how we run our office, right? It's an integrity thing for me. And when you're late habitually, not a car accident, let's not be dramatic here, right? But when you're late, it shows you lack integrity and you don't get to work in our firm without integrity, right? So you got to draw all these lines and conclusions. And the more time I've spent with the team outlining that, the more success I get, because now they can draw not being late to, oh, this potentially is an integrity issue over here. Maybe I shouldn't do that either, right? Versus if I just say, don't be late, but then they leave early, well, crap, I forgot to say don't leave early, right? Or get your job done, or these other things, right? I don't want to have an implication there. So I want to spell it as much as I can, and I want to tie it to the why because I want them to think about things.
Yeah, a couple quick notes. I know we're talking about onboarding, but in the hiring, someone showing up late, someone showing up not early for your, your interview, that's an immediate cancel that person. A great interview question to ask. Is like, for example, if you ask somebody, hey, do you have a chronic illness? That's going to get you a lawsuit. You're not allowed to ask that. If you ask, however, is there anything that would keep you from being on work on time every single day? And they say whatever they say, then you know, like, hey, you have no legal obligation to hire someone who can't show up on time.
Right.
If you say, I'm not going to hire this person because they have some personal issue enough, that's a legal issue. But saying, hey, is there anything that would keep you from being on time every single day? And if they say, well, sometimes I sleep in, or this other issue, oh, okay, good to know, thank you.
Yeah, my mom doesn't wake me up on time, right? Yeah, I mean, those things like that. I also like in the interview questions to ask them about evening obligations, right? About saying sometimes we'll do evening client events, we'll do evening seminars, we'll maybe do a team retreat on a weekend. Is there anything that would prohibit you from participating and joining in those events?
Yes. That's a great one, too. Micah, so as we talked about integrity, we talked about being on time. A good advisor friend of ours, he would always say, as soon as any team member thinks they're smarter than I am, it's time for them to go.
Ooh. Can you give an example of that?
Yeah. And so here's an example of it. And his logic is, it wasn't because he was this big egotistical jerk off. He was just saying, like, hey, listen, I'm the one taking all the risk.
Yeah.
I'm the one writing all the checks. I'm the one who's running this thing. It's my business. So an example would be if he says, hey, I think we're going to do it this way, and the team gives pushback on it, which pushback is great. We always welcome pushback. But then if he says, hey, it's going to be this way, and they kind of give him the eye roll or any kind of disrespect, like you don't know what you're talking about, okay, next. Absolutely, right. Those are absolute deal breakers. And I think this is an important thing in your onboarding process and to stress throughout the creativity of your team, because we always want our team to give us pushback, because especially the more senior our team gets, we want them to give us pushback because they understand a little bit more on how these operations are in place. But we got to create a positive way for them to give me pushback. If they walk in and tell me, no, we're not doing this, well, that's going to set me off. That's a trigger word for Mike.
Trigger word.
Needs a safe space.
Yeah. So that conversation's not going to go well, right? Now, okay, that's my limitation. I will own that, but I need my team to help in this way, right? So it says, yes, Micah, that's a possibility. Have we thought about this? Or is this an issue? Or I'm concerned about A, B, and C, right? There's a good time for those things to be brought up. So, but we got to empower our team with how to communicate those things. If we just assume a new hire is going to figure this out on their own, you're really creating a recipe for disaster.
Mm-hmm. So, excuse me. Something that Coach
he
John
gets all
Barron,
choked up when we talk together.
Up, a little emotional. Something that Coach John Barron always talked about is that it's almost never the person; it's almost always the system.
Right.
And so, if you have a team member that's not delivering the results that you want, our default reaction, this by the way is the same for your spouse or your children or anything. Our default reaction is, "I make mistakes, but you're an idiot." And that's just how our brains are programmed. And so Coach John would always say, listen, if your team member's not creating the result that you want, something in the system needs to change. Unless you suspect that they're maliciously doing it, in which case they need to go, and we're going to talk about that in a minute.
Right.
Then you need to adjust the system. Easy examples of this just in my own life is I have a tendency to forget things at my house, like my laptop or other things. I'll just leave them there and I'll leave. But I never, ever forget my keys. Partly because I can't leave without my keys. I never forget my wallet or my cell phone. So what I do is if there's something I need to make sure I take to work, like my laptop, I'll either set it by the front door so I can't walk past it,
right,
or I'll put my keys in my laptop bag. Now that feels like kind of a silly, trivial thing, but let me tie this around. Colleen, she's been with me for 10 years. We have this great working relationship. She wouldn't ask prospects, the leads that called in, how much money they had, what their net worth was to see if they were fit. And I would chat with her and we would script it and da-da-da-da-da. And I started to get upset. And I'm thinking, why won't she just ask this question? And I finally, again, took a step back and said, great, Colleen, tell me about this. Like, where's this going aside? Like, really with curiosity. And she said, Jarvis, I gotta let you know, I'm not comfortable asking people how much money they have. And so when I get on the call, I get nervous and I forget, or it leaves my mind, or I just don't do it. Okay, so I have options here. I can say, well, that's a deal breaker.
Yeah, that is an option.
That's an option, right? And in some cases, that is the option. So I thought, all right, what's another option? All right, another option, what if we put the minimum on our website? Colleen, would you be comfortable asking them to go to the website and make sure they fit our minimum? She said, absolutely, I would. And she does that without fail. I hear like, hey, have you been to our website to see what our minimums are? No, you haven't? Okay, well, please, I'll wait here. Please take a look. They, oh, okay. Do you fit our minimums? Yes, I do. Or no, I don't. She's great by that.
I love it.
Now, that was a system that I was able to adjust to still get the desired outcome I want. Other systems can't adjust, but I just want to give you an example of look at the system before you blame the person.
Yeah, and this is an important thing, too, is we have to use our client skills with our team members.
Yes.
right? So when I'm meeting with a client and I'm talking about something, I can tell when they have hesitation, right? Because I'm attuned. I'm paying attention to their body language. I'm paying attention to their posture, their breathing, how they're moving, their hand. I had a baseline. Now they went off the baseline, right? What is this read telling me? Same thing with our team members. We need to spend the time, and I'm talking to myself here, nobody else, just me. I need to do a better job at this. To really read that baseline and see when we're explaining a process, when the team member gets uncomfortable and saying, with your example, can we just tweak this process a little bit so they feel comfortable? Because now when they feel comfortable, they're rock stars about it.
Totally. Let's pivot just a little bit, Micah, because this example is just top of my mind. I can't resist. It's like having a secret. I can't resist telling it. An advisor that we very much respect has a phenomenal practice. He came to one of our live events. By the way, our next one is October 8th in Denver as part of XYPN Live. He came to one of our live events, and we were doing some coaching with him, and it comes out that when he goes in and asks his employees to do things, as he would walk out of the room, he could hear them say under their breath, but clearly loud enough for him to hear it, the F, I have time for that. F, I have time, but they would say
they'd fill it in.
They'd fill it in. This is not a family episode, but it's not going to be that extreme. And we said, Dave, you have to fire this employee.
Yeah,
and he says, guys, you don't understand. There's these different things. Yeah, I don't understand those other things. This person has to be fired tomorrow. Now, his extreme accountability, I might be getting this mixed up with another firing extreme accountability. I believe his was, if he didn't take care of it by the end of that week, one of our team members would call and take care of it for him on Monday.
That is correct. That's what I think so too. So, and this is one of the ones that we have to, and this is the reason we start with new hires and processes first before we get into this firing conversation. This is where we have to set the baseline with our new hires, with our onboarding, with our team training that we're doing of what we expect. Now, if we failed to do that, now clearly the F, I have time for that. I don't know in what world you would have to communicate that that's an unacceptable response. Apparently, there's a world out there.
No stealing. There's no stealing here either.
Yeah, I know, right? So there's some that you got to be here, but let's set them up for success. If you went to the pain of hiring for them and going through all of that, set up the time to do the training with them that's going to be needed, and then record the training. In our office, we had our leads when they onboarded the next employee. They recorded all the training. They had to do all of the training web-based, even though they were in person, because I wanted to record it. And now that's the onboarding process every new team member goes through, and we have 2.5 weeks of training system that they're going to go through to learn the different systems, etc. And we got that one piece at a time. So anytime you're doing training with a team member, you should stop. You should open up Google. You should open up Zoom. I don't care what it is. Hit the record button, record, and then save that in a trading folder, right? And then when that question comes back up, or you have a new hire, now you can just give them that Zoom video. You can give them that drive. Is that going to answer all their questions? No, but it's going to answer a whole lot of those questions. So having a good training regimen is important. The other part is in your onboarding process, you need to go back and set up the KPIs that how you are going to judge them for success. This is really, really important, right? If they do these things, they're golden, right? Easy example of this. In our office, we have processes we do. In any of our processes, we explicitly tell new people, says, hey, you're going to jump in here and you're going to see something in our process. And you're like, this doesn't make any sense. This is redundant. This is stupid. I'm going to skip this step because I know what's going on and I'm going to go do something else. And I appreciate the fact that you're trying to make this more efficient. But here's what I know is you don't see the entire process. So you can make no suggestions or changes until 90 days, right? Now take all of your suggestions that you have. I want you to write them down, please. Right? Fantastic. I want you to write them all down, go through it. What do you want to do, etc. Then at the end of 90 days, we're going to have a debrief, and I would love to hear about your suggestions and how to make things more efficient. But I don't want to take a 2-hour employee that's looking at a Roth conversion process and saying, I don't understand why I got to put in the marginal tax rate. This is silly. It's on their tax return, right? I don't want to take those conversations. We want to wait until after 90 days to have them. The other thing I tell our new employees, or all of our employees, your get out of jail free card, right? If a mistake happens, is to follow the process.
Yes.
If you follow the process, and now a process means it's documented, by the way.
I was going to say documented. Yeah, let's make sure that's clear in there.
Yeah. If it's documented in the way it's supposed to be documented and you follow that process, regardless of the outcome, well, that's not your fault. We might have a training opportunity after this, but you're not going to be fired for this.
Yeah. Boy, it ties to so many things. One of the things that come to mind, Micah, during this is, and this I thought of it when you mentioned, like, you need to talk to your employees the way that you talk to your clients in most situations. And one of those is to not come in anger or in extreme emotional state, right? This is true for all relationships, clients, employees, your children, your spouse, whomever this is, right? So we had, a couple years ago, we had a pretty significant trade error that I discovered, that the client discovered. It was this big mess we've talked about on the podcast, and I was furious. I was livid. I was blowing up Micah's text, which, by the way, is, again, the importance of having a peer group. I needed someone, like, I had to get the steam off my chest.
Yeah.
Micah obviously wasn't involved with it, so I blew up Micah's thing, calmed way down, made sure I was back to a state like, okay, now I've worked out all those emotions. I've let them all out. I've yelled. I've thrown rocks at trees, whatever this is. Now I can go back to the team and say, all right, great, a big mistake was made. A big mistake was made. Our very first priority is fixing this mistake, and then we're going to look at how to make sure it doesn't happen again. But right away, and the whole team knew as soon as I did that the mistake had happened, and they knew it was a big mistake. But I also stressed, I said, hey, listen, this mistake happened. No one covered it up. Everyone brought it to attention. Everyone's hustling to get it fixed. No one is losing their job over this. No one. Let me just tell you right now, no one's losing their job over this. This was not a malicious mistake. This was a breakdown in our process.
Yep.
We're going to fix the mistake. I'm calling the client right now because I take responsibility. And then we're going to fix this mistake, and then we're going to figure out how to fix the process. But my initial was, I'm going to go into the office, I'm going to fire everybody. I'm going to fire everybody.
Yep.
Yeah. In fact, then I'm going to charge them back for the cost of me fixing this mistake.
That's right. I'm going to withhold their paychecks to fix this.
It's illegal, by the way, but I'm still going to do it.
Yeah. But you got to get those venting off of your table, off of your chest. And Jarvis, I think this is so important, right? To go into there as a good leader and to create an environment where team members can own their mistakes.
Yes.
And that's one of the things that we talk our team members about, the same as you. It's saying, look, if you tell me you made a mistake, that doesn't mean I'm not going to be upset. Okay. I was like, look, I'm still human, right? And I'm going to be upset that mistakes took place because I still need it, depending on how big the mistake was and the clients it affected, right? I'm going to be upset, but I need a place to calm down. You're not going to lose your job. We're going to own this and we're going to fix this. But, when someone's bleeding, first thing you do is you stop the bleeding. The first thing we do with a mistake is stop the friggin' mistake, right?
Yes.
Fix it right away. Then we're going to figure out why it happened and do training afterwards. I don't want to get into this huge conversation about why this mistake happened. No, has it been fixed for the client, yay or nay? That needs to happen first.
Now, I also want to stress in this example that this wasn't just like peaches and roses. Like, hey guys, it's not a big deal. Let's hold hands and kumbaya. No, this came back up. In fact, it still comes up to this day when we're looking at processes. As, hey, remember when this trade error happened? This is why this step exists. This is why we go through memos twice. This is whatever that is. I thought of it earlier, Mike, when you were mentioning about don't skip steps in the process. Yes, I hate redundancy. Absolutely hate it. But I also cannot tolerate mistakes. Like, that cannot happen. So please don't think that we're sweeping mistakes under the rug, right? They have to be addressed. They have to be fixed. But if I come in with anger, I'm not gonna do really well there.
Yeah, you got to fix it. And then I also talk about it too, depending on the severity of mistakes, is look, this is how firms go out of business. Just to be 100% clear, right? This is how people lose their job. Big firms go out of business. This is why it's so important to go through these things. Now, let's reverse this on the firing side, right? So one of the things that when we've terminated some employees in the past, and there's always this adage about slow to hire and quick to fire, and I don't know, people say it, nobody follows it. Really, you need to have a clear metrics before you hire that person, before it becomes a person. At first, it's just a job. But before it's a person, you got to set up the KPIs on when you are going to terminate that employee, right? And yes, firing sucks. It's not fun. I get it. But I'm also, you know what? When I want to give money to charity, I write a check and I give money to charity. My business is not a charity, right? I have no obligation to keep their job. I am paying them to do a job. And if they fail to do that job, that is theft. I gave them money for something. They chose not to do it. That's stealing in my book, right? So I want to be really clear at the metrics in which I'm going to gauge this team member for success. And okay, once it crosses X line, they're gone.
Yeah. I want to add a distinction in here too. Well, I take one step back. We run into advisors all the time who tell us, you know what, Jarvis, Micah, I would have the perfect practice to the perfect RA, dare I say, if only I could hire Victoria, if only I could hire Colleen, if only I could hire Charnel, if only I could hire Alex, right? Naming people off from our firm. And so we get this idea of like, if I could hire this mystical employee with tons of industry experience, all these things, and if you have a source for finding those people,
please share it.
Please share it. Please share it. So, and the reason I mention that is you're not going to find very unlikely will you find the person with the perfect behavioral skill set and the perfect technical skill set. But we always want to solve for the behavioral stuff. So back to your thing, Micah, with firing employees, I will fire on behavior immediately. Just behavior stuff, I will zero tolerance for. That is not something I will. I'll put up with. Technical skills, I have a lot of patience for that, and I want to take real ownership, not like it's extreme ownership. Real ownership. All right, what can I do to better train this person? Right, we've respectively sent our teams to Ritz-Carlton training. We hire coaches for them. We even have a team member who hired her own coach.
Yeah, it was really impressive.
Yeah, which we then reimbursed. So I will provide technical skills all day long. Every single year. We have personal development budgets. Behavioral skills, you come to work with attitude. If you're dishonest, if you're not doing your work, if you lie to me, those are all gone.
Yeah, non-negotiable.
If you're disrespectful to me, if you're disrespectful to clients, all gone.
Yep, you're done. So these are things you, again, have these in writing, put these in your SOP, right, your standard operating procedures, put them in your employee manuals, right, whatever documentation you're going to have, and make this known and have your team members sign off on it. This is the code of conduct, right? You have these things, and then you're terminable. Also send them to your attorney. Let's make sure those are valid, are the important things there.
Yeah.
What about, all right, so let's talk about that. You fired an employee. Now what? Do you let them keep working for another 2 weeks? You bring them into the conference room, you have that uncomfortable conversation, and you say, great, we're going to give you, I don't want to give you a severance check, so I'm just going to pay you for the next 2 weeks while you find a job. Do you keep them around? Do you kick them out?
Yeah, and let's add one more layer of complexity. Let's say it's somebody who's been with you a long time. We end up with this with advisors that are transforming their practice, right? They're implementing surge, they're implementing value adds, they're raising their fees to better match their new value, and they have legacy employees that have been with them a long time that are just no longer a good fit. So what if in that situation or someone new, whatever the case may be, Micah, my preference is today's your last day. And personally, I like to do here's obviously whatever pay we owe you, right? Because that's mid-cycle, and then here's 2 more weeks' pay, and then I usually do another $1,000 of, and it's labeled as coaching or job placement help or whatever the case may be. I always err on the side of let me throw some money at this so it doesn't become a problem for me.
Yeah.
It's the best approach, but that's kind of mine.
And we're assuming good conduct, right?
Yes.
This is all good context stuff that went through, and I'm a big fan of that. If they're retiring, right, and they're making a different transition in life, this can be a different answer. Yes. And I could say, great, and maybe I want to hire the replacement first and have them train if they're game for that. But if I'm terminating somebody because they are not a fit in my new ideal practice or in my ideal practice, I don't want them training my new person.
Yes.
And this is a mistake I see advisors make all the time. Well, I'm going to hire somebody, I'm going to have them train them, but then it's going to be awkward, and then I'm going to do this. No, because then you're going to have the person who's crappy at their job that you want to fire telling them how to do the crappy things for the new job. Yes, it sucks, but get rid of that person, get a new person, you train them, or bring someone in here who should train them on the correct way to do things.
Yes, and so ideally you're following a surge schedule, and this isn't something that has to be done yesterday, though if it has to be done yesterday, it has to be done. So you say, great, I'm going to do this outside of surge, I'm going to be prepared for this. Here's when the whole thing's going to go down. Another perk of doing surge meetings.
Yeah, a huge perk of doing search meetings. The other thing that we have inside of here is one of the things, not just if we terminated a team member, which I really hope doesn't happen, but let's say one has a medical emergency, they have a family leave, they have to get out of the office for whatever reason. Our team needs to know where they are at in things. Again, this is processes. If things are not in our CRM, they don't exist. That's our policy in the office. So if you think you did something and I pull up the notes and it's not in CRM, I don't care. It ends right there. It didn't happen, right? It's documented or it never happened. Now, the importance of this, though, is not just having the team follow the system. Now, let's say, God forbid, Victoria, something happens to her where, she's a death in the family and she needs to unplug for a while because it's life. It could happen. The other team needs to be able to know exactly where she is with her steps, her processes, etc., to pick that ball up to make sure the clients are taken care of. And this is, if you are a solo advisor and you have one team member, advisor, this falls on your shoulders to know where these team members are, to know where the process is, to check these, to make sure they're moving the ball along the correct way. Not that they have a steno pad on their desk with chicken scratch, and you don't know what these notes mean.
We just did that recently in our office. We had each team member that had really critical tasks go through and just record a Loom video of them, just stream of consciousness. We had Linda then type it all up as a process. But to that end, there cannot be any employee I'm beholden to.
Yes.
So if I think, Jane does this task, and if Jane quits, I don't know who's going to do it, then Jane needs to be fired. I need to be able to step in and take care of any employee's task. Now, this doesn't mean I need to be able to do it as quickly as they can. Doesn't mean I need to know everything. But let's take, for example, we had my dad who does all our trading. We had him document that if dad decided abruptly to retire or, heaven forbid, had a death in the family and just one day couldn't come into work, I'm not an expert at that system, but I know how to get the experts on the line. Right. So I would we use Orion technology for that. I would call them and I'd say, hey, send somebody out to my office tomorrow and teach me how to do this. So again, I don't want to be beholden. You mentioned the death in the family example that happened to our good friend Benjamin Brandt. He was getting ready to do his fee increase the week before. There was a very significant death in a family of a team member. And then he had to figure out how to do fee paperwork himself. Perfect. Ben, and by the way, the reason he stuck with it is he had extreme accountability from one of our live events. But you need to make sure that you know how to, not proficiently, but know how to step in and say, great, I can fire any person on my team and life will go on.
Yeah, and that's a big redundancy thing more than anything else. Now, before you say, well, Matt and Mike, it's super easy for you guys to be able to do this because you have multiple team members, you have all this stuff set up, blah, blah, blah. Yeah, well, it wasn't always that way. And this will be maybe a cocktail story for another time, but there was a time where we had a quasi-mutiny when we fired the entire team. By entire team, I mean everybody. Everybody that didn't have the last name Shalansky was gone. And then it all fell on our shoulders to do everything in the office. So yeah, it was a pretty serious moment and really pivotal moments in our firm. But it was the aspect of saying, nope, this has now become a toxic environment. This is what we have to fix. And they're gone today.
Yeah, completely. I do want to pull that out. We've been, depending on when this airs, we've been kind of going some flame wars back and forth on LinkedIn on some challenges on can we do a bet or like a UFC challenge on financial planning, on the value that you deliver. And it's interesting, all of these sort of like these underhanded insults that come like, oh, you guys are just pounding your chest about how good your practices are. And our practices are really good, by the way, and the people throwing those barbs usually have these terrible practices.
Yeah.
But don't let yourself get caught up in that. Even if you're listening and you're thinking, these guys, goodness, their practices, I get it, they're great. Cool, what is it that you can take away? And so whenever I'm meeting with another advisor, no matter what I think about their practice or their personality, I'm always looking and saying, is there something that I can take away? Is there something that I can learn, even if I think their political beliefs are crap or whatever the case may be?
Yeah, and that's one of the things I really enjoy about our Invictus calls with members is, coaching these other advisors, working with them and going through things. There's stuff that I pick up chatting with them. Says, oh my gosh, that's a solid idea. That's a great thing you should add inside of there. I'm going to steal that for my practice. And I tell them that, right? And then they're very flattered by that because this is, and the whole reason we call it the perfect RA is this is a journey to perfection, right? We haven't figured it out yet. We figured out a lot of stuff, right? But we haven't figured it all out, thank God, because we enjoy that struggle, that fight to that next level. All right, this podcast is all about action items, so our listeners know what time of the pod that this is going to be. It's homework time. So Jarvis, what is the first action item our listeners should take this week?
Yeah, interestingly enough, I would say action item number one is have a plan for hiring a new employee. Have a plan in place, like really go through it. By the way, this is the same for anybody with a broker-dealer. Have a plan for leaving your broker-dealer. You may or may not do it, but you need to have a plan. For Backstage Pass and Invictus members, log in, look at the hiring guides we have, look at the job posting, the interview questions. This is a process to go through. That way you don't ever feel beholden. You know that, hey, if there's somebody who has to go, I know what my next step is.
I'm going to say that the second action item is you should have KPIs on all of your team members, or at least your department's ops, RM, trading, however you're going to set that up. You should have KPIs of metrics in there and says, great. And if you don't want to say this from a firing side, well, then say it from the opposite side. How do I know you're performing like a rock star? How do I know where I need to add training? How do I know where I need to give you more support to make your job better, right? And this needs to be objective as much as it can. Some of it's subjective. I get that. But a lot of it is objective as much as possible. But then we also got to have that other line there, whether you share it with your team or not, that says, hey, you cross this line and you're gone, right? These are things we're just not going to tolerate.
A great way to present that to your team members is you would say, Jane, Dave, whomever this team member is, you are a really good employee. By the way, from my heart of heart, I mean that you are a really good employee. And what I've discovered, though, is when you have too much on your plate, you just get your head down and you grind through it. But that's not healthy for you. It's not healthy for your stress. It's not healthy for the firm. I need a way to know, because I know you're such a hard worker, you're not going to raise your hand and say, hey, I need help.
I love that.
So I need to be able to watch that way. If you're getting overwhelmed, and I put it on me, if I'm giving you too many things, too many crazy, I need a way to know that. So that I can back off just a little bit. Yeah,
and it's not by telling me, no, I'm not going to do this, or saying F off, or like these other things, right? Yeah, so you got to give them a creative way, a structured way to raise that yellow flag and say it home. One other thing that I'm going to throw out there when you're creating these KPIs, a phenomenal way to do it with your team is when you're hiring your next person.
That's a great one.
Because when you're hiring your next person, you're not talking about firing any of the team members, right? You're saying, hey, we have a phenomenal culture in our team, and I truly believe this in my heart of hearts, right? Our team is fantastic, and we have a great culture. They like hanging out. We like doing things together. I enjoy going to the office and being with them as a team, and I do not want to bring anyone in who's going to jeopardize that culture. Again, back to having to fire everyone at once in the office, right? There was a whole culture thing that went down. And so I want to make sure I'm protecting that as much as possible. So in our hiring process, our third step is a team interview. And at the end of that team interview, the candidate goes off. We discuss the candidate. What do we like? What do we not like? It's always a culture question. And then we always follow up with the question that says, great, if this person onboarded, what would they do? It would be immediate, holy crap, this is the wrong decision. We should fire them, right?
I love it. Micah, we could do an entire episode, by the way. As you're going through that, I was thinking about how prospecting cures all ills, right?
Man.
And search meeting and value adds, like these three components, when those are existing, when those are healthy in a firm, I never see staffing issues. I never see team issues. When one or all of those are weak, I see tons of team issues. So it's another place to step back and say, if I'm having team issues, how strong is my prospect pipeline, which keeps us all hungry?
Yep.
How strong is my value add calendar? How strong is my surge calendar? And those really lay a foundation. Final action item on my list, Micah, feel free to add another one, is, of course, October 8th, we're going to be in Denver at XYPN Live, which is going to be a lot of fun. If you enjoy the podcast, us live will blow your mind. It's like watching Penn and Teller on TV and then seeing them in person. Micah never talks when we present in person.
Never. It's so phenomenal for everybody.
And I jump out of a fishbowl.
Awesome. Well, guys, thanks so much for listening. This podcast is now growing to north of 1 million downloads, and we owe that as a giant thank you to you guys and our audience. And until next time, happy planning.
Happy planning.